Okay, so now you guys are in the finals. Congratulations on that, first of all. You've got Korea up against Sweden. Who do you want to play? You've never played against Korea before, so I personally want to see you do that, but who are you looking to play?
I was watching games previously against like USA against Korea, and I think we should play against Korea. Like, I feel like really good against them.
Is there a certain player you want to call out? Like Arhan, you want to 1v1 him, or Eska? Or Ruje Hong, maybe?
I don't want to tell you.
Okay, that's all good. And by the
Sweden
way,
versus South Korea, one that a lot of the analysts and casters had predicted we'd see. So going into this matchup, what are some of your thoughts in regards to how South Korea plays? And I mean, have you guys done your homework?
Definitely. South Korea does something that other teams don't do very well, and that's just they're super coordinated. They barely do any mistakes, and it all comes down to shutting down Myro and then shutting down their Ana player.
One final thing, I mean, you know, you have some targets on that squad. Most notably, I want to dive into Miro. This guy, he is absolutely incredible, a force on that South Korea roster. What have you guys been thinking about? Like, is a player like Miro one of the guys you need to shut down, or is there someone else that maybe, you know, none of us are catching?
I think the Ana player doesn't get enough praise. He's extremely good, very talented, and he seems to get kills even though he shouldn't be. He's a player to look out for and someone we aim to shut down completely, him and Myro.
All right, well.
Have had the game plan for the South Korean team.
Well, that's typically how you beat the other teams. You know, they want to find out, what does South Korea do apart from the other teams? You know, how do we beat South Korea? But hearing him say they need to shut down Miro and they need to shut down the Ana player, I don't agree with this at all. They need to shut down the DPS here. You can't shut down Miro. He's a god on the
Miro's
system.
plan.
Didn't you
Miro
guys just
wants you
do
to
that
try
like
and
a
shut
week
him down.
ago?
You can't shut down Miro.
So
You're going to go down to Jason Kaplan, who has the captains of both Sweden and Finland with him. And hear their thoughts on this matchup.
thank you very much, Rachel. So yes, with the third place winner of the Overwatch World Cup, it's IDDQD, and we've got Zappis.
Tori peruttu.
Okay, and then let's look forward to Korea. We've obviously seen them not drop a single map the entire time they've been here, and they're looking to do that yet again in the grand finals. But Zappis, where do you think the strengths really rely within Korea?
Well, Koreans, they're like really well-oiled machine. It's like, it's hard to describe. It's so frustrating to play against the Koreans because they don't give you anything and they just take everything from you. And it's like the Winston player, like it suffocates to play against him. They are just so good.
Okay, so IDDQ, when you guys played against them yesterday, what was the problems for you guys playing against them? Like, what was the difficulty to kind of counter them?
I think it all comes down to the monkey again, like Myro playing exceptionally well. Probably the best player on those two characters in the game at the moment. Might be a little bit of a stretch, but he's like really, really good, and he knows when to jump out and just be a distraction. He has basically a game plan coming into every team fight. I think the biggest problem playing against Korea is that they always have a plan A and a plan B and a plan C, and it just keeps going and going and going. So it doesn't matter if you get picks, they somehow manage to take the fight anyways. Machines.
Okay, so IDDQD mentioned, so let's get some final opinions from you guys. What's the scoreline going to be? Who's going to take it, IDDQD?
I think Russia will take one map and Korea takes it all.
So one map for Russia. You think Shadowburn's not that strong? You think he can't throw his whole team on his back to get more?
I definitely think he can, but I think the Koreans are coming in super well prepared.
Okay, and Zappis, what's your prediction?
I'll give Russia 2 maps.
Wow.
Shadowburn is on point today.
Okay, well, thank you very much, guys. Congratulations again, IDDQD, for taking third place. And congrats.
in there again, and South Korea, they're actually going to hold point A. Unbelievable defense from these guys.
What is it about this team that makes them so good, in your opinion?
They're very well practiced. They win the Overwatch. They really took it seriously. They were grinding things out for a really long period of time. I think what we saw here was just a culmination of South Korea really leveling up their game for Overwatch. They love the game. It's super popular in PC, bonks, and all the rest. So for the South Korean team to come out strong, it's not too surprising.
The way they practice is just like heavier on strategy and team play, I feel like. And they're getting there mechanically.
It's space aimed as well. Yeah, and right here, the Genji runs up in his face, but dodges to the side, even though he had the reflect up, and he gets cleaned up as well, thanks to
We
the
realized that Korea is already like one of the strongest regions, and I think within months already they might, yeah, if Western teams don't step up, they might become like the best region.
AM Kangi and Korea is going on at the moment. Do you or your team look at the Korean scene and try and pick out interesting stuff that they do, or look at the metas they're running and try and compare and contrast it to what you're doing? And how do you think the two scenes compare in terms of skill and ability in the game?
Korean teams seem to generally value communication, teamwork, and combos and like ult management a lot more than other teams that have more individually skilled players in terms of mechanical skill and just game sense, and not necessarily better team players, but just better individual players like on their own in terms of playmaking potential, crazy headshot accuracy on McCrees or soldiers, just tracking. But Korean teams are more about teamwork and communication, and there's always something you can learn from them because they work really hard to achieve the highest level, like perfect teamwork and perfect ult combos and perfect ult management. So yeah, we take inspiration from Korean teams, but we don't seem like we don't have the mindset that Korean teams know exactly what they're doing. We want to find a good middle ground of teamwork and individual skill and using that, allowing for plays to happen, but still playing as a full team and still playing with a good communication and teamwork. But we don't want to exclude individual skill because that's a real thing in this game. Like a good McCree can turn a fight just like that, and we want to be able to put our McCree in a situation to do that if the fight asks for it, but we also want to be ready to just win a fight of pure teamwork.
The hero mechanics of the Koreans are really good, I think. Like, they're way better than the Europeans ones, but like, I think aim-wise, Europeans will always be better and NA players than the Korean. Like, I don't even know why, but I just think that way. People think that Koreans are going to be like really good in this game, but I mean, they'll be good, of course. I mean, like every team has like 2 teams there, and they switch out the rosters to make like a superstar team. I think every organization, but I think EU NA will be ahead of the Koreans for a long time in this game.
I think that different things work in different regions. Like we just noticed it with coming back from Europe, from boot camping almost a whole month in Europe. It didn't work here in NA. Like everything we practiced didn't work here. So I feel like we're watching them, obviously. We're looking what they're doing. Maybe it's better. Maybe we can steal a strat or something like that. But like we wouldn't like just straight up copy something and expect it to work just because it maybe works in Korea. Like it has to work here as well. So we might adjust it a little bit in that case.
There's actually 2 European teams there, right? And they both just got knocked out. So Lunatic High, 3-0 to Misfits, and then LW Red 3-1 to Rogue with their new lineup. So they didn't have much practice. From my experience in Korea, I would say it's not necessarily that they're, like, let's talk about, there's lots of excuses people can make, like, oh, they're 2 new teams, which is completely legitimate, right? Rogue and Misfits completely revamped their rosters. But honestly, people vastly underrate the Koreans, and in general, between the 3 regions, Korea, like, let's just say Korea, NA, and Europe, there's like this strange assumption that European teams are absolutely #1 right now in Overwatch, which is obviously true for a while at the top level. But there was never really any international competition at LAN except for Gamescom, because at E-League we had completely separate groups. And so, I don't know, I feel like people's assumptions are somewhat unfounded because we haven't had enough LAN tournaments where both tournaments are mixed in. Like, I'm at MLG, it's an NA only tournament. It's like, where are the Euro teams? I don't know. It's like, before that I was at E-League, I played only NA teams. Again, how do I stack up versus the European teams? I don't know. And I mean, there's online tournaments, so those are just a mess because you always have, Europeans are playing at 200 ping or North American players playing at 200 ping. And so, in general, I would say, between the 3 regions, the West in general, both NA, Europe, completely underrate the Korean teams, and I feel they would totally dominate the game not because of there's this, I would say, misconception where people believe oh, Lunatic High is by far the #1 team. I actually personally believe they're one of the best teams. Let's just use this as a random example. It's not necessarily that the top tier Korean teams are so good that they will dominate the scene. What is the most threatening part about Korea is, 1, they have more players than NA in Europe. They take solo queue infinitely more serious than NA in Europe. And the bigger problem is, I mean, let's talk about how many teams there are in Korea. I went to Korea. You know how many teams I scrimmed that were really, really good? There's 20 to 30. I come to NA, there's 8 to 10. They have double to triple the amount of teams. Okay, double to triple amount of teams, same level of talent. How long do you think it'll take until each of them has a star player and then they all merge and form a really, really, really good team? Because we're seeing it right now. Lunatic High, I mean, they didn't actually merge. Let's talk about LW Red, because Lunatic High just shifted roles, which is pretty cool. But LW Red, they had 2 star DPS players, Pine and Nanohana. The rest of the team, either they weren't having success, there's no chemistry, I don't really know. I'm not in the position to talk about the inner workings of their team. But regardless, they took the 2 DPS players, put them on the other team that had really good supports and tanks, and now they just rolled Rogue. And it's just I don't know, that's the type of thing I'm more concerned about when it comes to Korean teams, not necessarily that they're strong right now, but they have the talent pool and the player base to be very unstoppable in the future.
I think it's important to just see what other top teams are playing, whether it's major things like, you know, whole team compositions or minor things like a certain push or a certain just positioning style. I think looking at a lot of other teams gives you a lot of other ideas. So we do look at, you know, European and Korean VOD. As far as how the regions stack up, I think I think that each region has their own strengths. Obviously, there's a lot of mixing with a lot of top NA teams, you know, not necessarily being full NA teams. But I think that each region has their own style. But I think it's hard with how little international play, relatively, you know, little international play we have to determine actual rankings for the regions.
We definitely look at the games and, you know, at least see what they're doing, because sometimes they have a lot of really good ideas. Their meta's sort of been very different to ours in like a few manners. Like a couple of them are still playing the, you know, Tracer Genji thing. I saw someone did it against Misfits. So they're playing like the monkey heavy dive comp. In North America, everyone's playing like heavy tanks. So it's really interesting to like watch and draw from them. And, you know, there's always more you can learn in the game. Even if you don't think it's a good strategy, watching it is important.
This may seem like a bold statement, but I think Koreans and Korea as a country would dominate any esports game. Now, there's a caveat to that. First of all, this is based on my own experience and observation of many different esports games and throughout like over a decade, almost 15 years at this point in time. And secondly, when I say that, I don't mean that they will now and that in every single game you should expect them to dominate and that they automatically should be the best. But this is the caveat. If Koreans are really enthusiastic, obsessed with the game, and it's very played in their country, and their esports infrastructure fully locks into the game like it has done with Brood War, like with League of Legends, with StarCraft 2 to a degree, then I think that they would become eventually the best country in the world in the game. And what I mean by that is